Welcome to the Boom Trust podcast, where we explore important topics on neurodevelopmental disorders, which include, but are not limited to, dyslexia, cerebral palsy, autism spectrum disorder, ADD, ADHD, among others. Beauty out of Mire. We aim to enable individuals with neurodevelopmental disorders to live to their maximum potential and live fulfilling lives. I'm your host, Dr. Fidel Adabaraza. Welcome back. Today on our podcast, we look at a very important topic, and that is misconceptions of neurodevelopmental disorders in Africa. Understanding neurodevelopmental disorders and addressing the topic of misperceptions is very crucial in Africa for promoting accurate awareness about neurodevelopmental disorders and also helping the persons who have these conditions to live good lives. Several common misperceptions exist about neurodevelopmental disorders in Africa as we look at these conditions through the lenses of our own misperceptions. And we want to explore a few of these misperceptions and see how to be able to navigate them. You find that, for example, a number of people in Africa or around Africa look at neurodevelopmental disorders as spiritual and supernatural. And this is a misconception. Many communities will attribute neurodevelopmental disorders, and these are conditions such as cerebral palsy, autism spectrum disorder, dyslexia, ADD, ADHD, among others, intellectual disability, among others, to spiritual or supernatural causes such as witchcraft, bad omen, curses, or possession by evil spirits. Today we are here to demystify that and say these are not conditions that are as a result of spiritual or supernatural causes. These are disorders that are medical, and we need to see how to help the children and the youth who have these conditions. This belief of looking at neurodevelopmental disorders as supernatural and spiritual can lead to stigma, discrimination, and the use of traditional healing practices that might not address the condition. Because we begin to look at this person as though the person is possessed by some spirits and the like. And the actual thing is that this person has a medical condition and they need medical experts to look at the condition and to see how to help the person. The other misperception is lack of awareness and misunderstanding. And due to limited access to information in Africa, many people are not aware about this condition. Many people in Africa are not aware of the scientific understanding of the neurodevelopmental disorders or how they differ from other conditions. And because of that, this lack of knowledge can result in delays in diagnosis and appropriate interventions for the children and the youth with neurodevelopmental disorders, as symptoms may get to be ignored or at times even misinterpreted and just left there. And so the person goes through life struggling and nobody cares about them. The other misperception is equating neurodevelopmental disorders to mental health. I have seen and come across many times where I've been called upon to look at neurodevelopmental disorders as a condition of mental health or mental illness, so to speak, quote unquote. And so this misperception is a tendency to equate neurodevelopmental disorders with mental illnesses, which leads to further stigmatization again. And this misunderstanding, again, can result in inappropriate care for the person, the child or the youth. And as neurodevelopmental disorders require specific therapies and educational, interventions. Neurodevelopmental disorders will require specific educational and therapeutic interventions rather than psychiatric treatment, which is attributed to mental illness. Another assumption, again, about neurodevelopmental disorders is that we equate it, the assumption of intellectual disability. We look at conditions like autism or ADHD, are often assumed to be synonymous with intellectual disability. And so we, at times, take a different condition and we equate it to a different condition. And this can lead to underestimating a person's abilities and potential, resulting in limited education and vocational opportunities for the person. Or at times, again, another misperception would be a lack of support and resources for the person. And this is widespread belief that, there are no effective interventions for neurodevelopmental disorders in Africa, and therefore, even, around the globe, once a person has been diagnosed with neurodevelopmental disorders, they are left to fate. They are left to let nature take its course with the person. And so the person does not access the available support and resources for them. Now, this negatively affects the motivation of the individual and the persons around them, who will include even their very parents, who should be helping them to get the needed help. And families and communities might feel that seeking care is futile, and so they don't even give it a trial. And so the person languishes in life and they're left behind, and completely they deteriorate in the condition. We also have another sixth misperception, and that is stigma and social isolation. Now, when we look at stigma and social isolation, children and adults with neurodevelopmental disorders are often seen as source of shame for the family. And this is where you'll find that these children are locked up in their rooms, and that is if the family has a big house, where they have different rooms, they lock this particular child in a different room, and this child never sees the light of day. You can visit this home for years and never get to know that there is such a child who is part of the family. When they go out, when they go to social gatherings, this child is left, locked up. If they are able to afford, they have a person who is caregiving them right there in that room. But this child is never out, they never play, they never go to even just have sunlight and the like. And that is not good. At times you find we have places where these children, if they're in poor conditions of living, they actually even tie them on beds and lock them up behind the houses, tie them on trees, and they lead such inhumane life because of stigma and social isolation. Now, this can lead to social isolation already, and then restrict access to social services and educational opportunities, and even spiritual formation, as they are not able to go even to places of worship, congregations, so that they are also, like every other person, being formed holistically as individuals. The other misperception that we need to highlight and demystify is limited access to professional help. There is common belief that professional help for neurodevelopmental disorders is either unavailable or unaffordable. I want to let us know that professional help is out there. It is here, and we can be able to access it. Because when we believe that professional help is unavailable or unaffordable, this can discourage families, from seeking the necessary support, and also leading to challenges faced by individuals with neurodevelopmental disorders to even multiply and be much more. And so it is important for us to know that that is a misperception. We have professional help available, and yes, it is affordable as well. We can be able to help the persons with the disorders to gain the help available. We also have another misperception about educational misconceptions. And these are misperceptions that schools may not understand the specific needs of learners with neurodevelopmental disorders, leading to exclusion or inadequate educational accommodations. Now, what this does is that it results in poor educational outcomes and reduced opportunities to skill development. And most of the time, learners or children and youth with neurodevelopmental disorders end up not going to school and not being educated. Yet, we know that every person can learn. We are here to demystify and let the society know that every individual can learn if they are given necessary accommodations and if we care to go into their world and understand how they learn and be able to break down the materials, the curriculum, adapt the materials and the curriculum to their learning styles. Every individual is capable of learning something. There is also another misperception again of behavioral symptoms, misinterpretation rather of behavioral symptoms, and misperception that behaviors associated with neurodevelopmental disorders such as hyperactivity or repetitive movements are intentional misbehavior. And so you'll find that a child who has ADD, ADHD, or a child who has Autism Spectrum Disorder, they go to an institution, and then because of this, there is misinterpretation of their behavior as intentional misbehavior. So they get to be punished often for no apparent reason, for things that they have no control over. They get to be picked upon and isolated, and that interrupts them and that impacts them negatively, because this can lead to punitive measures rather than supportive interventions affecting the mental health and self-esteem of the individual. And so it's very important for us to get to know that these are not intentional misbehaviors, rather these are conditions associated to the disorder that the child or the youth is having. We also have another one, which is cultural norms and expectations. We find that there is an expectation that children should conform to certain cultural norms, leading to non-acceptance of behaviors that deviate from the norms that we have. And so if a person is not able to catch up to a particular norm defined by the society, they are seen as to be an individual that does not fit in. And this can result in social ostracization and increased pressure on the family to conform and on the individual to conform. And imagine this individual already has this disorder that they're struggling with, and we have set norms that we want them to fit in. It becomes very difficult for the child and for the youth. And therefore, there is a need for us to demystify all this and try to see how can we address these misperceptions, and then be able to be on the same page, understand the child, the children, or the individual with neurodevelopmental disorders, and understand their family, and even help support their family to understand the child and offer them maximum support in an environment, be it at school, be it in our worship congregations, be it in our neighborhoods, or in our families as a whole. Because when we do this, this is essential to increase education and awareness, and through community education programs, workshops, and media campaigns, we can be able to help everybody around us understand the conditions. Again, we can be able to also help support from health, get support from healthcare professionals as we do this. When we realize that a child has this condition, instead of you labeling them, the best thing for you is to go out and help the family and the persons around this child or individual, see how they can seek support from healthcare professionals, providing accessible and affordable healthcare services that include early screening and intervention is very necessary, because as we have continued to talk about neurodevelopmental disorders, they are wide, they are varied, they vary from one person to another. And depending on the level of the person, some people are on the mild levels, some people are on the moderate levels, and some people are on the extreme levels. And so it is good to screen every person and understand the specific condition and see how that specific condition affects the individual, and then see what then are the available therapies, supports, and professional care that experts can be able to give. And that is why it's very important to go seek healthcare services that include early screening and intervention. The other thing is that this will help us to also have community involvement. This is not about a family. When you have a child who has neurodevelopmental disorders, it calls on the entire community to be involved. The entire community needs to come up and see how to support this child and support the family. Leaving it to the family alone, it is such a heavy burden and such a heavy task. Therefore, engaging community leaders, educators, and families in awareness and support initiatives is very important. The community comes in because to handle neurodevelopmental disorders, we need to have a full cycle where we are working with the healthcare providers, that will be clinicians, medics, and that we have the therapists, we have the psychologists for psychosocial support, we have the counselors, we have the teachers, educators, we have the spiritual leaders who are forming persons spiritually, that will involve the clergies and the like. And we have then the parents, the friends, the peers, the siblings, and all that. And we need to see how do we come together and work as a community to support the individual with neurodevelopmental disorders right from the onset, from an early age and stage. And this will eventually promote inclusion, because we need to advocate for inclusive education, inclusive environments, inclusive families, and inclusive employment opportunities for individuals with neurodevelopmental disorders. And that again then will mean that as we do all these things, again, we are also advocating for policies and advocacy that include every stakeholder to develop policies that support individuals with neurodevelopmental disorders and their families. And by doing this and addressing these misperceptions, we can foster a more inclusive and supportive environment for individuals with neurodevelopmental disorders in Africa, improving their quality of life and opportunities for success. Every person belongs in the society, and we all belong to something beautiful. We need to have a mindset that accommodates everyone, brings every person on board, gives them the opportunity to flourish, because societies flourish when every member of the society is contributing positively to the flourishing of the society. Imagine a world where we had every tree was of a certain height, of a certain color, of a certain type, and produced certain, same type of flowers. I think it would be boring. But God, in his own wisdom and creativity, has created a world where we have different types of trees, millions of trees, producing different types of flowers with different color schemes, and has also created different types of people, some tall, some short, some fat, some slender, some women, some men, different colors. And so it is for us to realize that even in the way we operate, we have some persons with disabilities, and some disabilities are physical, some disabilities are cognitive. But we all belong in this world. It is an ecosystem. We all belong in. We all have something positive to contribute. A child with Autism Spectrum Disorder, a child with dyslexia, a child with ADD, ADHD, a child with learning disability, or whichever kind of neurodevelopmental disorders, they belong to this whole system. And they are important, significant members of the society. They deserve to be loved. They deserve to be heard. They deserve to be supported, to live, to learn, to play, and also to contribute positively to the flourishing of the society. They deserve to be formed physically, socially, emotionally, spiritually, educationally, cognitively, like every other person. And when we do that, the society will be a better place. And so wherever you are, whoever you are, learn to embrace, learn to speak life, learn to speak hope, learn to speak goodness in the life of a child and a youth with neurodevelopmental disorders. Thank you very much for tuning in and listening in to Boom Trust podcast, where we address important topics on matters neurodevelopmental disorders. We all belong to something beautiful. Stay tuned for more inspiring stories of resilience and hope. Beauty out of Mire.